It's great to be here. And today I'll be discussing some of the recent work that my group has been doing, again, in the area of tools and data for better understanding and for keeping track of cow profitability. So I'll start by discussing first tools or the tool that we have developed for this. And then I'll discuss a little bit of some of the hard data that we have generated for health and for repro. So again, pretty straightforward conceptually. So talk about the economics of dairy herd management and the tools that we are working on to estimate the dollars, cents, the profitability of individual cows, and through that of the whole herd or groups of cows of interest. And then again, as Kathy said, we work on repro, we work on health. I'll touch on how some of the strategies that we're working with, especially automation and targeted reproductive management, are helping farms and what are the economic implications of that. So three things that I have prepared for you today. I'll start with a tool that our group has been working on for a few years. We call this tool MyCow dollars or MyCow money. And this is basically a tool that estimates and documents, I should say, individual cow, and through that it can document as well the cash flow of groups of cows or a whole herd. I will then discuss a little bit on the economics of using automated health monitoring systems and some of the recent research that we have done in this area. And then hoping that I will have the time, I will discuss the economics of different types of reproductive programs and then different subgroups of cows within herds that could help us with this concept or idea of targeted or precision reproductive management. So the first one, so the tool, so MyCow money, MyCow tool, basically what we're trying to do here and the why of this is just have a better understanding of the economics and therefore profitability or losses of individual cows within herds in as simple of a way that we can do without the least amount of human intervention and as real time as we can do it. So if I were to probably ask anyone here in the audience today or anyone who will ever watch this webinar, if especially producers, if they know the actual profitability of their individual cows from estimations of their revenues and costs for that specific cow, rather than averages or whole farm or whole group averages that can be estimated just by aggregating data for a group of cows in a herd. So at least we are not aware, I am not aware of any tool that today can estimate in detail and document in detail the cash flow of individual cows. So why would we care about the cash flow of individual cows? Well, dairy producers and managers are every day making decisions, and dairy farms are businesses that must remain profitable, and pretty much any decision has an economic implication. And a lot of decisions still today in 2024 are made based on group level estimations, are based on averages, are based on what research at other farms has generated, and a lot of extrapolation. So the idea is that by having a tool that can estimate profitability for individual cows, we can make better decisions, which mostly is related to questions, right? And again, we start with the individual cow because that's the source of variability for that profitability. And then once that we have the individual cows, we can aggregate the data in whatever way we want. But we can make better decisions related to investments in health, in reproductive management, genetics, nutrition, and any other area of management that we have to make decisions, or producers and managers have to make decisions on farms. It would be possible to evaluate responses to changes in management or certain practices, evaluate diets, evaluate the effect of treatments and specific interventions. And of course, decisions at the individual cow level, such as keeping or letting go of a cow, getting a cow out of the herd today or waiting. So does it make a difference if we do it today or if we do it 1 week from today? Breeding or not breeding cows, today, especially now with the different type of offsprings that are being generated, can we make decisions about the type of offspring that we want to generate from an individual cow? So the questions and the decisions to be made are probably endless. And the point is that once that we have the data to try to answer those questions, we can make a lot better decisions. What are the challenges, or what have been the challenges so far? We either have no data whatsoever, or we have either poor quality, just incomplete data. It's not because people don't want to do it, it's just difficult. And then we have challenges such as the time lag until data becomes available in some cases and can be summarized. It is difficult for most farms, for the most part, to track individual cows. And once again, I'll emphasize this as I go. It's not the same to get we think, and that's why we are doing this, and eventually this is part of our research, that is not the same to calculate, an average cash flow per cow at a farm from inputs that come from groups of cows and from individual cows, right? So it's just really difficult for most farms to track individual cows. As much as we may not like this, the truth is that there are many metrics that do not necessarily reflect or are very closely associated with individual cow or herd profitability. And there are many metrics that we just have put a dollar value on improvements or losses on them, just from simulation models or estimations, and then the applicability and then the relationship or what we can expect at an individual farm are completely different. Which brings me to the last point here. Everyone is well aware that each herd is pretty much its own world. Each cow, it's its own world, and there is a lot of variability out there. It would be a lot easier if there was less variability, but there's a lot of variability in terms of how individual cows respond to management, how cows respond to their environment, and so on. These are just some of the few. My 3 dots at the end are basically to say that there are many other things that are problematic, and explain probably why we still don't have the type of tools and why farms continue to not have this type of resource. So what we have been trying to do is basically leverage the data revolution, leverage the revolution with precision technologies, and the many things that we are measuring from individual cows, the way that farms manage cows, and then the effect, characterize the tools that allow us to characterize the environment and the effect of the environment on those cows. And as many of you probably know, if you have been following the research that we have been focusing in recent years, we have been playing a lot with this idea of precision management, target management, or selective management. There are many names for this, but the idea is rather simple. I mean, as an idea, it's just that it's a little bit harder to implement, and it's hard also to get to the outcomes, and truly know, what to do, to be honest. I mean, that's the research that we're doing and trying to figure out. But conceptually, we're just trying to put together any data that may have any predictive value or may help us just characterize the performance, the biology of cows, whether it's genetics or sensor data, environmental data, performance, just any herd records and economics. And we are taking advantage of, again, the data revolution and analytics and just like putting it all together and trying to figure out what to do with that data. And just conceptually, one of the things that, you know, we are chasing after is, well, can all this data help us get to subgroups of cows within herds that are different for any outcome of interest that may have economic value or herd management value. And here I'm saying high, medium, low. I mean, we could do any sorts of classifications of cows. But in any case, the point is, you know, go to herds and, you know, decompose those herds into groups of cows that will have different performance because they have different biology, because they are managed differently potentially, and then implement management strategies and decision making for all the different key areas of management that eventually lead to better performance, better economics, and of course profitability. So and that's in a sense, you know, what we have been trying to do here with this tool, which again we call this MyCow Money. And simply put, this is a software tool. It's actually today is in the form of a website that, don't get too excited, only we have access to for now. But it's a tool that basically automatically and in real time, and I'll refer to what exactly real time means, automatically and in real time estimates dairy cow profitability. And I'm noticing, you know, that I'm changing my terminology a lot: profitability, economics, cash flow. Those of you that are hardcore economists, you know, will probably criticize my you know, changing of terminology. But basically, and as I'll show you in a moment, we are calculating the cash flow, you know, the difference between revenues and costs of individual cows. So this is at the farm level, and you know, each farm will have its own engine that is basically ingesting all the data that is used for the calculations. So in very, very simple terms, again, what we are calculating is the difference between revenues and expenses on a per cow per day basis. So if the cow is making a profit, the number will be positive. If the cow is making a loss or is at a loss, then it will not be a profit and it will be a loss. So very, very simple. This revenue minus expenses, and then, you know, the key is on what the revenues are, what the expenses are, which is the beauty of what we're doing. So again, we are leveraging wearable and non-wearable sensors that are commercially available for farms. Today, we are leveraging data and the power of dairy herd management software, nothing new there. And then we are leveraging access to market data, to prices for inputs and outputs that are relevant to this estimation of revenues and costs. Again, the tool is meant to be, and it currently is, for the most part, fully automated. There is no human intervention, except when something breaks, which I'll touch on that later. It's real time as we can at the moment. By real time, we mean, so we calculate this on a daily basis, but the tool has a 2-day lag for very, very technical reasons and the way that data is ingested. We think that, you know, users are probably be willing to live with a couple of days, 3-day lag that the tool has, at least for now. In the future, we may be able to handle that in a better way. And I want to make this very clear. So it's purely aggregation of existing data. We just aggregate data generated on the farm for individual cows on the herd. Okay, there is no, for now, okay, I fully understand that That's everyone's goal. That's everyone's dream. Those of us who work on this, we all want to predict the future as far as we could. But we focus so far on just aggregating existing data because we are convinced that having aggregated existing data can be valuable for farms. There are multiple uses of this aggregated data that, despite not having an idea of what may happen in the future, farms can make better decisions. So a little bit on how the tool looks like. There are different areas or sections within the tool, and this is just the most general one. And basically is the one that reports the profit, the total profit in dollars per cow per day. And the tool can, again, so this is an individual cow level tool. So here we are looking at cow 15,953. The tool has the ability to generate the charts and accumulate the data by days in milk. It can also do it by date. So as you can see here, this is the exact same cow, but in this case is by date instead of by days in milk. And if anyone is paying attention, here is the 0 line. So you can see when the cow is profitable, at least considering the revenues and expenses that we are accounting for, versus when the cow is at a loss. And of course, this is a daily estimation, so it is expected that the cow is at a loss. These are breedings, which actually we have those events. So we actually ingest the events from the dairy herd management software, and that's what we are using for the calculations that I'll describe. But in any case, this is super simple. It's just the dollars per cow per day for the period of time that we choose to look at for an individual cow. And here is reported on a daily basis. And here on the cumulative box is reported as accumulated for the period of time that we requested to the tool. So there's also the option of looking at the table, with a table format of the data. And again, the cumulative values for revenues and expenses. And what I wanted to highlight here is basically the fact that we have not only days in milk and date, but we also have some other cow features that would allow us to group cows, right? So again, at the end of the day, and I understand it's fun and it's cool to look at individual cows, but for most decisions, probably for many, many decisions, farms will want to aggregate data from certain groups of cows, whether it's lactation groups or pens, or whether it's pregnancy or days dry, whatever it is, or genetics, as I'll show you later. So we have that ability, and we are bringing in a number of cow features that allow us to do that. So if the user is interested on looking at specifically, and anyone will be probably interested on looking at this, once that you look at the profit, you wonder, right? So where do the peaks come from? Where do the valleys or those downward peaks come from? So it is possible to look at specifically just the revenues and all the aggregated expenses, and you can appreciate, so there is no separation here, there's no breakdown of the revenues or expenses. So and I'll show you now what those are and how exactly we're calculating this. So basically, to get to this profit or loss and to calculate revenues and expenses, we are aggregating data. The data that we are aggregating is milk value, calf value, which are the two sources of revenue, as you would expect. Then we have feed costs, health, replacement costs. And at the moment, we don't, but in the future, we are planning to include other operating expenses. So milk value, and I'll mention this right now too, because you will notice that we have access to certain type of data that probably the vast majority of dairy farms do not have. And I know that, we acknowledge that, but the approach that we have taken was, let's start with the most complex and the most detailed, and then we can scale back the tool to situations or scenarios, dairies, that do not have the same amount of data, especially because they don't have the technologies that we have for some of the farms that we're working with. So I know that you will notice that we have very, very detailed data that probably very few farms have. One of our goals in the future is to scale it down to get to probably the average farm on a monthly testing program, and that has only a few technologies. So for example, to calculate the milk value of a cow, again, daily milk value. So we are given an actual price. When I say market price, in fact, the goal is to use the price that the farm gets for the products. And of course, this is completely anonymous for individual farms. And we say that we use the market price that the farm gets for their components. But we are actually using pounds of fat, because we have actual fat production, protein production, and lactose production for every cow at every milking. So that's through a technology that is capable of monitoring milk components on an individual cow at each milking. So we basically just, estimate the actual milk value through milk components, which is quite complex, how farms get paid and all of that. And that is part of one of the intricate areas that we had to work on, and we still have to perfect a little bit. So calf value is, once again, we use the market value for the different type of offspring. And of course, we are accounting for whether a calf for an individual cow is born dead or alive, whether the calf is a female or a male. And of course, these days with the dramatic differences in prices between different breeds of dairy cattle, we are also accounting for the breed of the calf that is born to try to truly account for that calf value. So for expenses, feed, health, replacement costs, and again, other expenses will add into the future. Feed cost, probably the weakest link, just as most of you would probably realize. So estimating dry matter intake of individual cows on commercial farms is not yet possible. And we know some companies are getting closer and closer to doing that. I'm convinced that not too long from now, through technology, we will be able to do that. However, it can also be estimated, and it can be estimated as well as it can be based on the number of equations that are out there. We did choose for now, and we are exploring the effect of using different equations, and we're going to try to validate different equations. We use the NRC equation, but probably what makes this slightly different to what you would expect from just predicting dry matter on a cow at a commercial farm is the fact that we do have the actual body weight of every cow every day. We have walkover scales on some of these farms, and we have the true or the body weight measured by scales, right? Whatever the accuracy of those scales is, right? But we have the actual body weight of cows. We have the actual fat corrected milk, again, because we have milk components, we have daily milk volume, so we can estimate fat corrected milk. Of course, we have week of lactation, and right now we are using different equations for dry cows and lactating cows, and we're trying to see how to perfect that. As far as health costs, we are trying to account as much as we can for the actual interventions of individual health events. So based on, again, market prices for the cost of drugs, the things that cows receive when they become sick. And again, we have the individual events, and we have, for the farms that we work with that have very detailed health treatments. They even enter the treatments that cows are receiving. So we are calculating the specific health events, and this is just an example. You can see a cow here that had 3 events related to health, whether were preventative treatments or were actual treatments for the disorder. So we are accounting for that. And we are also, another area that we're working on with the tool is that not all farms have the data that we need for the detailed estimation of treatment costs and the way that we want to do it. So we're doing like a fixed treatment cost by disease, and then we have an option that calculates for individual drugs and specific individual treatment events. And the tool accounts, because the other important aspect of health events on cows is the effects on productivity, right? The effects on milk production, the effects on reproduction, the effects on herd exit dynamics. So we account through all the other outcomes, all the other revenues and costs that we are accounting for. We are accounting for the actual effect of health disorders in cows, and I'll actually use that today as an example, a case study example to show you. Repro, very similar to health. We keep track of individual reproductive events, and once again, we use the market prices. We either use estimation of whole events, we just do an aggregate of what's the average cost of a first breeding through time AI, heat detection, and a second and subsequent breeding through time AI. Or we have the ability, again, you can see the example here. This farm enters each individual hormonal treatment, breeding, pregnancy, outcome from pregnancy testing. So in those cases, we can actually do it in detail. But we're keeping track of, again, individual events, and more than anything, we are calculating differently the cost of a breeding. If it is a time AI, this is an example. This is a cow that was bred for the first time with double offspring. Then she got a pregnancy diagnosis, and then she aborted and was rebred again with a GnRH injection, and then was inseminated and detected estrus. So we are keeping track of all the key reproductive events, plus the type of semen, whether it's sex semen, conventional semen, and then of course the labor associated with that. And once again, the effects of whatever the reproductive management program is on a farm, on cow performance and the herd dynamics, it will be accounted for by the actual effect of the program on cows. We don't estimate any future, did the cow get pregnant or not, or anything like that. We just let the cows go through and get those estimations. So finally, replacement cost. We basically calculate the cash cost of a cow that leaves the farm. And to do that, we account for the three key drivers of that cash cost, which is the beef salvage value, which again, we have the ability to calculate that in pretty good detail through body weight. So we have the actual body weight of every cow every day. So we are estimating the asset value, so the beef asset value of the cow every day, whether the cow exits or not. So we can report that. Farmers can see. I mean, is it convenient to let the cow go today? Should I wait a little bit more? Is that cow gaining weight? Is that cow gaining any value on the farm? Of course, we add the heifer replacement costs, and here we use as much as we can rearing costs on the farm, and then the average calf value, which once again, we are already estimating that is one of the revenues that we estimate for the farm, and we include that in the cash cost estimation. So just to give you a few examples, so this is one cow. She was sold at 247 days in milk. She was sold because of low production. Interestingly, I mean, she was sold at a positive, so she generated some revenue of $34 despite the replacement cost and the calf value. Here you have another cow. This cow is sold relatively at the same time, 231 days in milk. This cow had an abortion, and this cow generated $490, or the cash cost of her replacement or replacing that cow was $400. Very different. This last cow that I'm going to show you, this cow had a negative cash cost of replacing the cow, and you can see, so the value now goes negative, so the loss was $211. This is a cow that was sold at 23 days in milk due to a health issue. So again, I mean, farms could look at this and, learn about, what's the variability, what are the sources of variability for cows that are replaced on the farm. And last but not least, we left this for the end just because we wanted to focus on the key drivers of profitability. And in fact, I didn't mention this, but the cumulative values, both for the expense and revenue, you can actually see the contribution of each one of the items that we are accounting for to the total, either expense, revenue, or even the profit. And this allows, very quickly one can, at a glance, can get a sense of, for this cow or for whatever group of cows we're looking at, what's the contribution of the different areas of management. And, there are so many questions out there as far as, using different health treatments, using repro programs. So what is their true contribution to, to overall expenses and revenues and profitability? So I think that that's a pretty nice thing for the tool. So in the future, we are considering adding milking, housing, the cost of wearable sensors, and any of the other operating expenses that we have on farms. So let me give you just one example, one case study example of something that could be done with MyCow money, at least today. Again, the tool is constantly evolving, and we hope that it's going to evolve a lot, and always happy to receive any feedback from anyone about what you think that the tool should be able to do or should look like. So just one simple question, and with the data that we had available, what is the economic effect of some clinical health disorders that we observe typically in dairy cows, and what if we look at the first 60 days in them? So what I want to show you is super simple. We just say, well, let's try to match a group of healthy cows and a group of cows that had these disorders, metritis, mastitis, or metabolic and digestive disorders. And here's when things get tricky. You have to try to match these cows, as close as you can to have a relatively fair comparison. So we try to find cows, we match them by lactation number, genomic merit for net merit dollars, fresh date, which is important, right? Cows that, under relatively similar management based on when they calved, and then for multiparous cows, previous lactation milk. So I'm going to show you, of course, as I said, it's cool to look at individual cows. I mean, do you want to know, what was the effect of having metritis for cow 14,487 at the farm? And these are the cow features here. And you want to know where the expenses came from, you want to have an idea of the value, you can do it, right? But at the end of the day, maybe for decision making, there is a lot of value in looking at groups, and that's what I want to show you a little bit later. But again, so basically what you can do with the tool, you can look at the individual cows, the ones that had the event, and then the ones that did not have the event and were matched to those cows that had the event. And you can aggregate that data, and that's part of what the tool will be able to do at some point, okay? So again, and I cannot emphasize this enough, and actually, is one point that I probably did not emphasize a whole lot, about the numbers that I'm going to show you now are very, very specific for one farm, are very, very specific to the input and output prices that we use for MyCow money to estimate the cash flow of these cows, okay? So please don't quote me, don't go around later saying Julio said that on average, a case of metritis will have an effect of reducing $98 within the first, and again, only the first 60 days of milk. This is pretty cool. You can actually see, so this is the total profit. Green are the healthy cows, and red are the cows with metritis. As you know, the vast majority of cows have metritis here within the first 10 days in milk. You can see the massive drop in profitability. This is the average for the 11 healthy cows and 11 cows with metritis. that I'm putting here in this group, right? So for mastitis, for this farm, for the prices that we included, this farm is $125 less for cows with mastitis matched with healthy cows for the first 60 days in milk. And then for metabolic and digestive disorders, the estimated difference was $109. Again, just one example as I started, I said there are a lot of questions that we could ask, a lot of decisions to make. Do we want to change the way in which we treat cows for metabolic and digestive disorders? Do we want to implement preventative treatments? Whatever it is, the whole idea is to get a sense of how much would we spend at this farm? What would be the value of implementing this new strategy or this change on this farm? So just to finish with this, basically, I wanted to, tell you, and of course, I'm very realistic as far as to where we are at today versus where we want to go. Again, we have been working on this project for a long time, and I actually forgot to mention this. I want to make sure that I acknowledge and thank the New York Farm Viability Institute, which supported, so they financed this project through a grant. And very importantly, and something that I really appreciate from the Institute staff, they were always very supportive of this project. This project, has been on the works for quite a few years. It has been a lot more difficult than what we initially expected, but we are getting there. And the Institute has been fantastic at, again, providing partial support for the project and also supporting us through the process. So where are we at today? The tool needs a lot of enhancements, a lot of things. We have made it a long ways, but every day as we run it more and more, we find some issues. We still have to add some of the details that we need to add, and just things that will make the tool more accurate, will make the tool better. Of course, we need to validate it thoroughly with data from commercial farms and research. So we are working on that. So now that we have the tool, that's a lot easier. For a long time, it has been a struggle. It's really hard until you actually can see the outcomes. It's really, really hard to think about validating the tool. Again, I'm fully aware. I know that not all farms have the same type of resources, data stream. We are working, and we will work on methods to adapt to the diversity of farms that are out there. And it's data diversity, right? So what data is or is not available. And we are not yet ready for large-scale deployment. I could spend hours talking to you about the challenges, the issues that we have faced over time, and we still continue to face them. Data ingestion or aggregation is not easy. Power goes off on farms, the internet goes down, computers have to be restarted, cloud-based systems go out of synchrony or they don't communicate. And there are some things that we still have to enter manually, although we want to go completely away from that. Anyone who worked or works with data knows that data is not easy. Data is messy, is complicated, and many times it's even hard to spot the issues. So that's a challenge. And again, not all farms have the same data available. Of course, there's a lot of opportunity and things that we're working on, and we are looking forward to partner with others in the dairy industry, how the tool could be deployed to commercial farms, as much as possible, or how other companies could learn from what we have done and they could deploy to commercial farms. We are hoping to start learning a lot more very quickly, as now the tool is functional, and we are, it's such a joy to see the tool working and the data coming all the time. In any case, we are looking forward to learn from the tool, and then of course we're going to be using it a lot for research. Okay, so now switching gears, and I hope that you still have some energy and you can have some attention, and I'll try to be brief with these two other topics. So I'm going to discuss first the economics of automated monitoring, and I'll be actually quite specific. I'm going to talk about a recent research trial that we have conducted, and we have put dollar values on this. Okay, so basically, everyone is aware here that there's a lot of tools. There are a lot of tools out there that can be used to automate health monitoring and management in dairy farms. And we, as well as others, have shown that these tools have value. Farms have been using them with different levels of success or failure, but there is quite a bit of value on using them. So I'm not going to go there in a lot of detail. I'll just show you one example of how these tools can be used. And I always have to go back to this, and it's the fact that the value of these technologies can vary a whole lot depending on the individual farm and how the farm approaches health monitoring and management and what their goals are. And we have on one extreme the farms that do very little to nothing to look for sick cows. And in those farms, the value might be on just being better at spotting the cows of interest. So finding the cows of interest and potentially being a little bit better with improving diagnosis. Then you have the complete other extreme. You have farms that are on top of their cows a lot. They are very intensive. So their management programs to identify sick cows are very intensive. And for those farms, the potential value might not be on being better at spotting the cows of interest, but rather reducing labor needs and cow manipulation, and still be able to find, relatively similar proportion of cows and have relatively similar herd performance. Of course, there is then everything in between, okay? So there is then everything in between, and then each farm has to figure out what's the best way for them to use these technologies. So today I'm going to focus just on a study and data that we have for this study, in which we have done work on this end of the spectrum. What happens with farms, or what would happen when you implement automated monitoring on farms that currently do very little to nothing, okay? So we compare a relatively simple fresh cow health monitoring program, visual observation, just walk the fresh pen every day and pick the cows for a clinical exam. And I want to make sure this is clear. The only difference between the two strategies that we used is how cows were picked for a clinical exam, okay? So in the alternative group, the group of interest, in the automated health group, we use alerts. So we use health alerts from a neck attached sensor for milk deviations from the powder. It is not my intention to describe the experiment in detail, so just to give you a very brief idea of what is that we did. So in the automated group, again, we use the alerts from this commercially available system. So the SenseHub system for Merck Livestock Intelligence, and we use the health index score that they create. We also use rumination time as an absolute value, and we use less than 250 minutes, and a milk reduction of more than 20%. For the visual observation group, cows were only selected based on their appearance, right? So based on the presence of detectable clinical signs of health disorders. Once that the cows were examined, the exact same procedures were used for all. So we were interested in looking at, percentage of cows detected with disorders and herd level outcomes. But, excuse me. Very importantly, what I actually want to focus my time today, we were interested in this case on economics. So we calculated the cash flow through income over feed costs, health monitoring costs, replacement costs, and treatment costs within the first 21 days in milk. And then we calculated from 21 to 100 days in milk cash flow through income over feed costs and replacement costs. So briefly, I have to tell you, the key findings from the study, and the take-home message is, well, you use automation in the way that we used it, you are going to look at more cows. You're going to run more clinical exams, and on average, cows are going to be examined more times based on automation. And just to give you an idea, this farm where we did the trial, so about 5 cows on average were selected for a clinical exam based on visual observation versus almost 16 cows for the automated group. So you check more cows, you run a clinical exam on more cows, it's very likely, and indeed here is the data for this trial, you're going to find more cows with health disorders. So we found 14 percentage points more cows more cows were diagnosed with health disorders. That led to 10 percentage point difference in cows treated, always more for the automated group. You treat more cows go to the hospital. So 6 percentage point difference in cows sent to the hospital, which increased the number of cow days in the hospital by almost 160 days for the automated group. What's the upside of this? Well, on average, so cows in the automated group made more milk for the first 21 days in milk, a total difference of 33 kilos or 1.5 kilos per cow per day. The difference came from cows diagnosed with health disorders. We found no difference for cows that were not diagnosed with health disorder. It was purely due to the effect, we believe, of treating cows and helping them with the treatments. So again, you are likely, at least if it is a scenario like the trial that we did, more likely to find cows with health disorders. However, through treatments and improved interventions, cows had greater milk yield, at least in our trial. We saw no differences in the herd exit or pregnancies per AI. So now the questions that relate to profitability are, well, you have to do more clinical exams. So does that increase labor costs? You treat more cows. What are the implications of that on labor and treatment costs? What about the cost of the technology? And finally, does the increase in milk income compensate for all those extra costs? Disclaimer, once again, this is totally preliminary data that my former student, now postdoc Clara Real, has been working on. And, these numbers may change as we go and we continue to improve this. But in any case, were there greater treatment costs? Yes, $1 on average for the automated group. And then, as you would expect, more health monitoring costs through the sensors and the labor associated with treating cows and diagnosing cows. And there was not a statistically significant difference, but there was a numerical difference with greater replacement cost for the automated group, a slightly greater replacement cost for that group. So, and when you put it all together for cows that stayed in the herd, and we have to make that separation because of the effect that cows that stay versus cows that leave have on profitability, and I'm happy to discuss that later. So there was a benefit of $11 for the first 21 days in milk in favor of the automated group. However, that difference, even though numerically it was always in favor of the automated group, there were no statistically significant differences afterwards or for the first 100 days in milk. So in a way, and just as you would expect, the difference is observed within those first 21 days in milk, which is when we see the greatest difference in, or the only difference in milk production. Again, still positive, still of potential value for commercial farms, but there was not a statistically significant difference, and we have to be cautious with that. For cows that exited the herd, that left the herd, we also found no statistically significant differences, although numerically, and we think this is just a little bit of bad luck and random chance because such few cows out of the total leave that it makes a lot of noise when you have 1 or 2 more cows leave, especially if those cows die. So we believe that that kind of generated a little bit of the noise that we saw in the first 21 days in milk, but then over the 100 days in milk that we looked at, you know, it ended up being pretty even. Okay, so to finish with this, again, for automated health monitoring, for the first time, I guess, in our studies, we find, you know, like a greater, you know, or a gain in cash flow for, you know, a group that uses automation. Again, it's numerical for the first 100 days in milk, and it was mostly due because of the first 21 days in milk. So yes, there are greater expenses. However, the enhanced milk yield in early lactation fully compensated for that. Please keep in mind that this is one experiment, one farm under very specific conditions. I mean, you cannot easily extrapolate this probably to other farms. And last but not least, we did not account for any of the other uses of automated monitoring tools. You know, they can be used for estrus detection, they can be used for herd monitoring and other things. So of course, you know, that will be a completely different type of analysis, and I'm not showing you that, okay? So very quickly, I'll use 5 more minutes, Kathy, to talk about the economics of repro programs. And you know, I just wanted, you know, because I'm very excited about this data that we have recently generated. And basically, we have been looking at some data that we conducted a trial at 6 commercial farms, and we have been exploring the association between reproductive management and some cow factors that drive cash flow. And the interesting thing about this trial is that we followed these cows for 2.7 lactations on average, so 28 months after calving in the first lactation. So this is Emily Sitko's work, and part of this is already published. So we just calculated the cash flow of, again, these cows, about 2,700 cows that we followed all the way through this period of time. And very importantly, too, we randomized these cows to 2 different types of management. So we managed these cows with a program that was very aggressive with the use of heat detection. The idea was to use as much heat detection as possible and to use the least amount of time AI as possible. And then the opposite, a program that used as much time AI as we thought was reasonable and minimize the use of detection of estrus. And I'm not going to spend time describing the programs. If there are questions later, I'm happy to answer them. But for the aggressive time AI program, double opsing, the best raising that we have, looking at cow ovaries, the time of non-pregnancy diagnosis versus just heat detection after prostaglandin, and using a cedar zinc for cows not detected within about 20-some days after the end of the voluntary waiting period, and then resynchronization at 32 days for open cows for you know, that group. Okay, again, that's not the point. And interestingly to us, but not surprising, I should say, we found no statistically significant difference between the treatments. So there is a $25 numerical difference over the entire 28-month period. That's about 3 cents per cow per day. I mean, it's not a large difference, you know, for those that may even say, well, you know, still valuable, but remember, this is over a relatively long period of time. So there was not a big difference. So in a way, again, you know, these 2 types of strategies, at least for first lactation cows, for primiparous cows, seem to be effective and to lead to relatively similar economics. However, again, we are very interested on this idea of identifying subgroup of cows that have different performance and that we can manage differently. So this idea of precision management. So we are looking for ways to classify cows early in lactation or in life that can then allow us to manage them differently. So what we have been doing for this, of course, we you know, are there differences by some cow feature? And the one that we have been looking at is milk production. And you know, I get this question all the time. Farms, veterinarians ask me all the time, are there differences based on when cows get pregnant, how they are managed based on their milk production? So we looked at the association, for example, between days open in the first lactation and profitability over the 28-month period. And you can see this here relatively clearly. So it seems like getting pregnant anywhere from 50 days, which is when we started breeding these cows, to 100 days, optimizes profitability for this whole group of cows managed differently. I'll show you, the different subgroups in a moment. And it seems like profitability starts to drop with days open greater than 100 days, with a pretty substantial reduction after 100 days, $150 to $200 reduction. But very interestingly, what we found is that there is an interaction. So there is an effect. And actually, I have a little bit of an issue here with what I have for p-values, but there is an interaction between milk production level and the effect of days open, whereby, so the high producing cow, the top tertile, so the top 33% of the first lactation cows in the 6 farms did not have a major decline in cash flow over 28 months as days open increase. You see, there is variability, goes up and down, but you can probably, draw this flat line and there's not a big difference. On the other hand, the ones that drop quite dramatically and, significantly, and of course you can appreciate the tremendous effect of just milk production, were the medium and the low producing cows. The medium and low producing cows, those cows, had a pretty substantial drop as days open increase, their value, their cash flow went down. So basically, that's an effect of milk production. And then there is an interaction with treatment, where we found that the high producing cows did best when managed with the Time AI, aggressive Time AI program, and it was the opposite for the medium and low producing cows. The high producing cows with the Time AI program made $200 more than the predominant heat detection program, whereas the medium and low milk yield made more money with a combined program, most likely because of the earlier voluntary waiting period. They will have fewer days open by starting to breed them earlier, and the difference was about $90 and $115 respectively. So again, and I finish with this. For first lactation cows, when looking at cash flow over 28 months, it seems like kind of the breaking point for the drop in profitability is 100 days open. There is variability depending on milk yield. The top producers, no major change as days open increase, whereas the medium and low producers go down. And high producers might benefit from more aggressive Time AI programs with longer voluntary waiting periods, whereas the medium and the low groups would benefit from the other strategies, the one that have shorter voluntary waiting periods and combined programs. So, well, I hope that you learned something today, again, about tools that can be used to monitor cow profitability and the economics of automated monitoring, health monitoring, and repro programs. I want to make sure that I thank, of course, always the people that make all this work possible. Martin Perez, who recently finished his PhD, Clara, Rial, Emily Sitko, and Sebastian. They are the ones that generated most of the data for this. And of course, the funding agencies, especially, once again, the New York Farm Viability Institute for providing funding for part of this work, and then our other collaborators.